and I think I might be live. In which case, happy holidays and Merry Christmas and all these other wonderful things people say this time of year. I hope everyone is well. We have people from, was it Columbia? Was it British Columbia? Hello up there. Canada, I think it is, if I remember rightly. Saskatchewan, which is fantastic. Wisconsin. So, yes, hello, everyone. Hello. It's going to be quite a casual chat today. And, Jim works for the University Libraries. Amazing job. Well, it sounds good to me. I don't know how fun it is in reality. Sean, hello from happy Minnesota and Germany. Hello. That's good. We've got some Europeans here as well, which all makes me feel happy. Hello, Oklahoma. And we've got a few people here. So thank you all for turning up. That is an advantage, Jim, to have access or to university papers is a wonderful thing, So I don't expect too many people to come today because it's the holidays, but hopefully we'll have a nice little chat and discuss wonderful things. There's some news to tell you, interesting things that have happened, things that are going to happen in the future. Okay, and someone from Cambodia at 3 a.m. in the morning. Well, I am privileged that you're up this late or early. Thank you so much. So, as always, usual rules apply. If you have questions, ask away, but just please put a Q at the front of them, and I'll get to them when I can. Oh, young Helen, hello, and Albuquerque. Wow, lots of people. It's good to see you all. So usual rules apply. If you've got a question, put a Q in front of it and ask the question, and I'll scan through the chat at some point because otherwise I sort of can't pay attention to the chat and talk to you at the same time. Hello from Portland, Oregon. That's really it. So what am I going to talk about today? There's a few things, bits of news, things that have irked me, things that haven't irked me and cheered me up. So I'm not really too sure where best to start. Where do we start? So the first, perhaps where a good place to start is with Irving Finkel. And he did an interview with Lex Friedman, and a few people had a little chat about that, and I'll talk about that first, perhaps, if that interests you, so about cuneiform and writing and the like. Hello from North Carolina. Wow, there's a good distribution of people. A question already. Let me answer this. So T-Wes Skyfather. Oh, no, that isn't it. I don't know what I'm doing here. Very untechnical. Have you considered a collaboration with Jackson Crawford? You're interested in lion, but you have very different approaches. I have exchanged messages with young Jackson some years ago. We don't see eye to eye on some things. We do on others. I really admire what he has done with regards to Old Norse. I mean, I first started following him when he was stuck in an office, I think in Berkeley, teaching the rudimentaries of Old Norse language, as I wanted to improve my ability to read Old Norse. That was really good. But as he's grown, everybody changes and develops and that. And so we don't always see eye to eye with certain things, and his approach to his community is a bit standoffish at times, I would say. I'm happy to have banter with you and exchange commentary, and I feel he does less of that, or is empathetic less. Would I collaborate with him? Certainly, if there was something to collaborate about, I would. I don't feel he probably would want to with me, but my door is always open if that opportunity ever came up. Yes, maybe one day in the future that happens. So we will see. More questions, lots of questions already. So hello, Crackenford. Hello, Polar Vortex. So do we have any familiarity with the book Bible Myths and Their Parallels in Other Religions by Doan. It's a good read, but not much is known about who wrote it. Now, there's many books written by that. Probably the most well-known is Fraser's. Let me just see. I don't know where I'll stick all my books on religion. Sometimes I've got them split across the office, depending whether they're mythological or theological. I can't remember where I put my books regarding myths of the Bible, but there are a few of them. I'm not aware of it, but I certainly feel that there needs to be a better version of a book that shows parallels of myths and where they go into the Bible. But yeah, I'm not overly familiar with that. But Fraser was he caused some problems for himself with writing of his Golden Bough. Excuse me. He was a great translator. And he does bring up some good work. So if you're interested in books like that, that's where I would go with that. But yeah, Doan's book, I don't recall off the top of my head. I'm sorry. So yeah, people are seeing the interview with Finkel. That's good. Right, yeah. So this is what I'll perhaps talk about. Do you agree with Irving's assertion that there was early writing at Göbekli Tepe? Now, there is a paper which was released some years ago about the flat stone. Let me see if I can find that. And if I can, that might be my Zotero. 1 second, Zotero. If any of you, I don't know if you're familiar with Zotero, let me, if you're not, let me just put it up for you. So when you collect papers, academic papers, you may not know how to file them, how to use them. And if you're ever writing a paper, you need to reference other academic papers. So I tend to use Zotero to do that. So if I, can I share my screen? Can I press this button and it works? Does that work? No, that hasn't worked, I don't think. I don't know why that hasn't worked. There we go. All right, so my library. Something's gone wrong here. Have I got a search bar up or something? This doesn't make sense. So basically, Zotero, you can put in all your papers and it'll just store them in nice order. And then if you go into Microsoft Word, you can then load in a Zotero add-in and write a sentence saying, let's say a flat stone tablet was found at Göbekli Tepe and you want to refer to a paper, you can then do insert citation and it would check your Zotero library where you've put all your data in and then throw it into Word. And then you've got the reference and you can just change the formatting of the reference depending on what you prefer, whether it's Harvard, Chicago or IEE or whatever. So it's an absolute must have tool if you're writing papers. Now, what I will try and do is I will see if I have a paper in this list. I know I had one somewhere. No, it isn't something I referred to yet. So, but yeah, the flat stone was written about some years ago about it being evidence of writing. And it isn't that it's actually evidence of writing, it is evidence of an object that is used if people were going to write. So it's a seal. And what would you seal if it wasn't writing? So the thought is that this flat stone with engravings on it, I think there's a snake, potentially a person or a tree, and something else must have been made because people were writing. But there's no really other evidence of writing. So perhaps they're writing on organic material. And where has the organic material gone? Because it just isn't preserved in those environments, not at all. So I mean, that's one of the reasons it was difficult to understand if Göbekli Tepe had roofs. Because roofs were made of branches, and we know that because actually in the soil, when the roof collapsed, logs laid and the logs disintegrated, and they left holes where they were. And it's only because we see the absence of a log in a log-shaped hole that we know there were logs. And this is one of these other things where we see this, there's an absence of writing, but we see this flat stone with engravings on that is used as a seal, which you'd normally assume would be placed on writing because it's a repeatable thing, almost like an early printing mechanism. And yeah, I think writing was definitely, or a form of writing or proto-writing was definitely being used. The challenge we have, for me anyway, is that cuneiform requires a sort of triangular shaped stick to be pressed into clay. Now, one of the reasons we have clay tablets is because many of the clay tablets were burnt in a fire. So most of the clay tablets we have from Sumeria, I think, are from just 2 locations, very close to each other. So they're not a great representation of all documentation. And those rooms were in a fire, and those clay tablets hardened. So that's why they're preserved. Many clay tablets weren't preserved because they're just clay, and if they get wet, they may become corrupt. And the rest of the clay tablets tend to be broken because they're ones that are left behind after, let's say, knowledge bases were raided. Or that's the feeling I think Finkel had. So what was the early writing if it wasn't cuneiform? Or was it cuneiform when we just have lost all the clay tablets, which would seem exceptionally unlikely? So if it wasn't cuneiform, there must have been enough form of writing on organic material that was going on. And if so, why didn't that continue if we have cuneiform? So there's pros and cons for that. Pros and cons. Certainly they're using iconography, otherwise you wouldn't have the seal. Are they using iconography in a way to write prose? I don't know. It says the jury is out. But it's a great question, anti-contrarian, great question at all. Right. Other questions. Here, a political question. I don't really do politics. What's your opinion on nationalists, far right taking over neo-pagan religious landscape? I'm not overly keen on neo-pagans, and I'm definitely not overly keen on nationalists because that then leads to other forms of bias. So I excuse me. So I don't do religion. I do myths, and which were religious, but I don't have that fault. So I don't really care. I just don't believe we should have biases based on where you're from or the color of your skin or anything like that. That's just ignorant. So, in my view, anyway, I think that's ignorant. So, I feel both nationalism right now is not great, and I feel that neo-paganism has certainly got some issues, and yeah, it is being influenced by various groups for the wrong reasons. So, and I'm not too sure how best to influence that other than to do what I do, which is talk about the myths, which I haven't talked about really much recently, and I'll come to that later on because I want to talk about those more. So, hello from Montana, Scott. Let's see what else we got. The Down book is free from Gutenberg Press. Okay, I'll look at that. Hello, Naga Creed. Hello from Brazil. Right, more questions. Right. Are you familiar with the assertion of Herodotus that the founders of Tyre were from Dilmun, modern day Bahrain? If this is true, could it have implications for later Phoenician society and religion? Right. So this is interesting. So we find why Herodotus is trying to create history, as we would call it, sort of factual commentary on the past. There were still biases on where people were from or doing what, and so what he may say he thinks is the truth isn't necessarily factually correct. And to be from a particular city like Bahrain, or particular region, Bahrain, I feel I would be skeptical of that. I mean, only DNA would show us rather than a history book, and I would rather rely on DNA to sort of give some evidence for that, or some linguistic or cultural influence. And I don't think we really have seen that. So no, but it's just quite interesting. This brings up another point, actually. If you're familiar, there was some news lately about they've discovered a labyrinth underneath the pyramids. It is a labyrinth Herodotus talks about, long lost labyrinth despite it being in a completely wrong part of Egypt. But putting that aside, have they found it? And this is where we have to be careful about language, because Herodotus says it is a labyrinth, but the pictures they show literally a maze, not a labyrinth. And Herodotus would be really careful to say this is a maze and this is a labyrinth. So does the maze type structure that they are showing represent a labyrinth? No. Therefore, is it the long lost labyrinth they were looking for? Almost certainly not, because one, it isn't a labyrinth, and two, it's in the wrong place. But so when we look at the words, we have to be sort of really careful. Do they mean what they mean, and interpret them, put them in context? But I'm not. I'd say we need DNA, anti-contrarian, to show that Herodotus was right in respect to the founders of Tyre. I am going to remove a comment which is weird. Uncle Tepe still right. So on the Göbekli Tepe stone sill, according to Esmail Still, Sarah Kilt Costello, Memory and Ritual Reviewing. Oh, right, that's the paper. Oh, it's telling me the paper. Yes, that is a paper. So that's 14 years ago. Blimey. Oh, I didn't realise it was that long ago. Wow. Yeah, well, thank you, Sean, for that. Right, let me carry on whizzing down. I'm just making sure there's nothing been written. Dilmun was the equivalent Garden of Eden. Yes, the myth of Dilmun. So we've spoken about the writing. We sort of touched on that. So what else is going on? So we had if you're on my Patreon, we had someone join who joined at the highest level of patron, I would say, for literally a few days. And I wanted to put a message out there. So if you want to ask me a question about research, feel free to just email me a question about research, and I will do my best. I'll try to respond to as many questions as I can in my YouTube comments and on YouTube membership and Patreon. I do my best, and I try to help others as I can. So you don't have to join Patreon if you want to ask me a question. But we had someone join Patreon to ask me a question, and then spammed chat with some of his hypotheses, which I've now all deleted. But I just want to say you don't have to do that. But I mean, I couldn't really help him too much apart from saying you have to provide more evidence. But I thought I'd just share what was being said to see how you felt about that, because I actually think this is, well, I think it is called paraphernalia. I think it's called like where you see patterns and you see shapes in them. But if I go this map, right? So what happened is he sent me this map, and if we zoom in, this is Europe. Okay, this is the place that Trump and Vance don't like at the moment. If we zoom in, what he was saying is that I'll draw my mouse around it, this shape here actually looks like a human. So there's his legs are at the bottom over Greece. Across the Alps is his right arm or left arm, depending on how he is. His head heading into Germany, and his arm going around there. This is the Transylvanian plains here. This is Romania, the other side of that. And he was basically saying this is a man, and the man is part of a myth, and Anatolia or Turkey is a dragon eating the man. And I was trying to say, you're just seeing a pattern in the landscape. You need to provide evidence of the geology and to prove that that hasn't been shaped by shifting earth plates and tectonic plates and things like that. But it was interesting to get that, and it's interesting to reply. But I just want to be honest, and share that with you all. Pareidolia, that's it. Pareidolia, that's the one. Thank you, everyone. Because there are many examples, but I just thought I'd just share that with you in case any of you felt the same thing. But I was skeptical, and you get common arguments. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And yes, it's a pattern in the landscape, but it's not a pattern. Well, it's just a pattern in the landscape. That's all. So I can't really add more to that. So yeah, right. Anyway, let me whiz down. Gospels of John, saw that, right. There's some questions. Other questions? Oh, Gospel of John and Arlene saw that. Oh, right, here we go. What languages can you read with ease when doing your research? With ease, English, French, maybe a bit of German, a bit of Russian, but not fully. And I don't read normally. So the way I recognise things is by recognising the shapes rather than the vocabulary. So it's really odd. But it's from my computer programming background where I wrote programs to analyse text and try to convert it. I was always looking at shapes rather than what the actual word meant. So that's what I do. But it's now so easy to use translation tools. I have to be honest and say I use those probably 90% of time, maybe perhaps 95% of the time when getting text, because it's just so easy. If I'm on a browser, it'll often just say, do you want to put this in English? So I won't even bother trying to read it, which is probably really bad because I'm going to get worse and worse at being able to translate the language I can do. But that works really well, but you have to be careful with translations because many things need to be interpreted rather than translated. And that's, I've talked about that before. So a really good example is in England, we say it's raining cats and dogs when it's raining really hard. But if I was to translate that in French and say like it's raining chien, they would say, what? Yeah, why? What do you mean? But they would actually say it's raining ropes if we translate it into English, or it's ropes are falling from the sky. And we'd have no idea what they would mean. So that's the difference between translating literally and interpreting to give a narrative translation. So you have to be really aware of that when using tools as well to translate, which was the advantage of doing manual translation or certainly supervised translation of text. And that's a warning to all of you, if any of you doing that, looking at foreign text, or if you're reading any text that has been translated, always try to get 2 copies of it from different authors, because then you get a better view of that translation. I'll use an example that I've got probably now 13 or 14 copies of the Poetic Edda, purely because of that, and I have about 5 copies of Homer's work, and yeah, it's necessary. So get as many copies, translations as you can when dealing with it. Another question. What are your thoughts on comparing language and mythological systems as early social technologies? Right. So there's 2 ways of looking at this. So the mythology database I run, whilst I initially created it for storytellers and comparative mythologists, actually it's probably used over half the time by social scientists, because they can use it to study old stories to understand what was happening in society at the time those stories were written, which is really interesting. So they can understand what trade was going on, what were the key components of society, what the hierarchy was structured, and things like that. So there's that aspect of it, for in terms of using comparative mythology. But in terms of using comparative mythology, or looking at the myths to understand social technologies, that's a little more difficult, other than looking at the context of saying if they're talking about princesses and princes, or kings and queens, or lords and ladies, or whether they're talking about monotheistic gods or pantheons. So you can use it like that. But in terms of other aspects, now I would say that you see the big shift. So you'll always see poetry normally in the early cultures, because poetry has come straight from the oral tradition, because oral traditions tend to be poetic because they're easier to recite, easier to recall, easier to remember. But what you'll find is there's a shift to prose at some point, and that's when society becomes more administrative. I would say when there's more people, when you have accountants and people taxing and things like that, they don't care for writing those things in poetry. They would just rather write the detail down. So that's probably the key significant difference you'll see and what they actually write about. So the early writings tend to be not only poetic but about why the world is the way it is. So true myth, explaining things that science can't explain. Where when you get later societies, such as Greece is a really good example of this, and Persia, where they start writing about star systems, astrology, philosophy, that's where you can start seeing technologies change. So that's probably a good use of it as well, but it isn't something I tend to use it for. They say the social scientists tend to use it like that, and they do use it a lot. And I was really actually surprised to see them use it as much as they do. In fact, they probably ask me more questions about the database by a factor of 10 than any other type of academics, which is possibly because they don't understand comparative mythology, so don't really understand the sort of language used within the mythology database to search. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. Hello, everyone. Oh, this is the more questions. I've got more questions. So I just written down. Too large compared to now. Yes. Right here. So another question. Right. Could the variety of animals found on the pillars of Göbekli Tepe be an early Noah's Ark or right concept? Collecting one of each animal for societal preservation after a catastrophic event. Okay. How can I answer this? It's not impossible, and that is because the myths of the flood go back long before Göbekli Tepe. That was so work by probably Dahui. He wrote a paper a few years ago, and I might have made a video about it actually, I think a few months ago, on the flood. We date the origins of the myth to about 30,000 years old, the origins of the flood myth, coming from Southeast Asia. And they have developed from creation myths of a primordial sea, and then these creation myths tend to turn into flood myths that tend to change and develop. And we see things like the earth diver turn into the dove that flies off to get land, which is a key motif or mytheme used by some to show the link between flood myths being similar. And I think Irving Finkel mentions it in his discussion with Lex Friedman about the flood myths being the same because they have this bird character in it. Now, could the animals represent that? I think it's unlikely because not all the pillars have animals on, and the ones that do have animals on tend to only have one or two animals on it. In fact, I think I actually made a video about this probably just over a year ago, when I just came back from Göbekli Tepe. I think I made a video going through all the pillars because I took photos of them all to show them all. So I think it's unlikely. I also think the pairing of pillars, so there's T-pillars in the special buildings, we'd call them, because there are residential buildings or homes around Göbekli Tepe, but the four central special buildings, the big buildings we recognise, they have T-pillars in and pairs of T-pillars. And some people have assumed those pairs could be related to, let's say, Manu and Yimo of the Indo-European creation myth. But you could also argue, is there's this pairing in there? Does that mean they're pairing potentially animals as well? Is this going on? And I don't see evidence to support that. So it would be up to people to prove that, to say that is. But I cannot see the link there. Because of the lack of other imagery reflecting flooding, I would say in Göbekli Tepe, I would say that is unlikely. But it's an interesting question, very interesting, and I like questions like that where we should ask these sort of questions for anything we find, just to to keep our minds open on what could be possible. But I certainly don't feel that is the case right now. And by the way, if you're interested in writing and cuneiform, if you're not familiar, there's a tool. Let me get that screen up. There's a website called Fragmentarium. Fragmentarium, yes. So this is a website which gets fragments of documents and uses AI to draw them together to see if any are the same, and it therefore can reveal complete pictures of poetry or prose that would otherwise be lost in the fragments. Well, I believe the University of Baghdad is working with, I think it's a German university that makes this, to put fragments of cuneiform into this, and this year did rediscover a lost poem due to that. And if you're interested also in cuneiform, there is a library, the Electronic Babylonian Library, where you can search for things, texts. Now you have to be careful. If you use this, it says transliterations. That doesn't mean you can type in something in English like Tiamat or Babylon. You'd have to type in effect, the phonetic equivalent of cuneiform. So here we are, B, Azag, Bauzu, Kima, Nikpi, which any Babylonian would know in their time. And if you search that, then it will come up. I've got no idea what this means, by the way. It comes up with the tablet, and it tells you information about the tablet. I think you can click on the tablet here, you get the full translation. But it is, well, not translation, but the full text, and then you could translate that probably. But this is all under license, under sort of open source license, so you can copy and paste, providing you reference that. But if any of you wanted to do your own work into cuneiform, those two tools, and even old manuscripts, Fragmentarium is a really interesting site. There's not much on there, I think, at the moment. Thousands of documents, maybe not tens of thousands, but there is a limit. The EBL has quite a few cuneiform things on there. So, but I really think that's quite interesting how they're now using AI to try and piece tablet fragments together to recover stories that were lost to us. Which, yeah, I find that's fascinating. Hello from Herefordshire, Lindsay. Good to see you here. Let me I'm just whizzing through my queue. My question. Have you seen the trailer for The Odyssey? Do you have any thoughts? Yes and yes. When I saw Troy, I had high hopes, but Troy is nothing like the Iliad, really. And so I feared that The Odyssey is going to be nothing like The Odyssey. I mean, I'm not overly pedantic about sort of the armor they have or things like that. I mean, they're sort of quite difficult to make, and you want to keep the audience interested, and certain kinds of makeup and that draw the attention and create characters and make you feel about them in a particular way. So costume design is part of the cinematic sort of experience. Because I know there are some creators out there who go in for this sort of thing. Oh, the sword's wrong and the helmet's wrong, and they should be wearing sort of bone type or tusk armor or whatever rather than plate. So, but I do worry. I mean, it was interesting they had Polyphemus, or they implied that Polyphemus is going to be in there. I don't know about the Lotus Eaters. I didn't see anything reflected on that. So, I hope The Odyssey is going to be a great film. I really do. Mr. Nolan, if you're watching this, which I doubt, but if you are, please do your best to make it a great film. But if not, just read the books then, which are absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be entertaining. I still watch Troy occasionally. It's entertaining, but really don't watch it in the hope that it will allow you to clue yourself up on what the Iliad was about, because you would look like a fool if you quote the movie thinking you know the book, because you just will not. And I feel that is going to be the same with The Odyssey. So just whizzing down the day. Right, here we go. Another question. Right. I was asked about a collab with Paul Reeves. Correction, I mean Paul Reeves. Whoops, sorry. Oh, right. Yes, I haven't done anything with that. I've been way this holiday period I've been a lot busier than I usually am, which is why I haven't produced anything for like videos or anything for a while. I am in and out. I won't be back probably till the 2nd of January. So when I'm back 2nd of January, I will make a World Tree video, and I'll start looking up other things. So yeah, things may come in February. Yes, things may come in February, but we'll see. I'll reach out to him to see if we can do something, if there is something to do. Right. So some interesting questions here. So S. Mill says, why would snakes' wheels be on the Ark? And because they can, snakes swim constantly. So here's an interesting thing. So the first dragon stories are about controlling water. The dragons control water. And that we think is because snakes were very much associated with water. And we see that the oldest stories we have of serpents are the rainbow serpent by the First Nation Australians and the rain snake we see in South America, all to do with snakes and water. So yes, snakes and water are absolutely linked. And certainly wherever I go in Europe, if I see snakes, I think probably 90% of the snakes I've seen have been in water. So whether they could live in water for a year, I don't know, because I think that's how long the flood lasted, wasn't it? It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but the waters didn't go down for a year. So whether they could do that, probably not. But did someone build a boat to put in two of every animal? No. So I think it's I wouldn't worry about it too much. Snakes survived. There we are. That's where we are. We are. Right. Let me see if there's any more questions. All right. Did you see Matt Simpson, I think you mean, Ancient Architects' recent piece on Göbekli Tepe, positing that it could be some of the imagery has to do with something else like excavations? Right. I know Matt very well. In fact, I just housed him earlier. We speak probably most days, but not about architects or history. He's a good friend. But I didn't see that. But about excavations, that's interesting. So is that to do with the stone structures found in the walls? And then, because have they found bones there? I don't know about how many bones they found, but I thought the bearing of sort of stone structures. And I know there was a skull cult. They're talking about skull cults at the site of Göbekli Tepe. So perhaps that's all part of that. That is interesting. Why do we see that anywhere else? Didn't we have a little think on that? Could that suggest cannibalism even? Although you'd have to check the bones. I don't know. Perhaps I should watch one of his videos. I hope he's not watching this because then he'll have a go at me for not watching his videos. But I will check that out, T Rose. I will. That's interesting. Right. So, all right. Are there any untranslated cuneiform tablets in the British Museum? I may be wrong, but I remember Erwin Finkel in one of his videos say that there are some. Yes, there are probably thousands of untranslated tablets, or not properly translated tablets. I mean, I think Irving's of the skill set. We can look at a tablet and probably read it reasonably well if it isn't corrupt or eroded in some way. The problem you get is where you get fragments and erosion and corruption that causes problems. But there are thousands, but that's why you would like AI. So that is a really good function of AI to give a good translating estimate on these tablets. So I'm sure with time that will come and we will find out a lot more. However, as I say, because many of the tablets come from the same place, we don't really have a diverse sense of literature of the Babylonians or Sumerians. So in a way, I'm not too sure we're going to find too many new pieces of narrative what excites me more is the Herculaneum scrolls near Pompeii, where they've had this library where the scrolls have been pretty much carbonized, and to use AI to unravel those. I think that will probably be as beneficial to the historians as finishing translating the cuneiform, because many of them are, the cuneiform are sort of just administrative records. Yes, right. So what else did I want to talk about? Oh, yes, there was another interesting article I was reading about what happened this year, and that is regarding this wonderful object. So, oops, let me get rid of, can I get rid of that? This is the Antikythera device, I think it is. Antikythera device found at the bottom of the Mediterranean, used by people, some people, to say, oh, there was an advanced civilization because they could create these wonderful sort of computery type things. So a university in Argentina recreated one of these in a computer simulation and used it. And the result is that it tended to get stuck and jammed 90% of the time. It just wouldn't work 90% of the time. So it's perhaps why there weren't many of them created. Perhaps they were trying to sell it to someone. I don't know. I mean, it looks fantastic. Looks really intriguing that they would build something. But if it isn't working 90% of the time, then is it anything more than a cool looking ornament on the mantelpiece? I don't know. So, but yeah, I thought that was quite interesting in terms of news that have been discovered. What's the app name? So are you saying, oh, you want to actually use a simulation? You have to go, I wonder what university it was. I'll have to find out what university that was. Where did I read that thing now? Well, I'm sure if you can Google the device. Let me Google it. I see? Must be something about it. Simulation. Let's see if I can get something up. There's something like there's some news articles about it. So if you just Google it, you'll get a web page like this. It turns out the ancient analog computer didn't function very well, and there'll be some information there. And then you can probably trace the university. So I'm pretty sure it's an Argentinian university who did the work. Oh, yeah, National University of Mar del Plata. So yeah, look them up. They may have a model. Oh look, there you go. It doesn't look like a great app, not one to keep you up at night, but yeah, just I thought that was a really interesting article there again, knocking back people thinking that ancient civilizations had advanced technology. Yeah, yes, they're probably doing things more advanced than we give them credit for, but that doesn't mean it always worked. So, but yeah, it was a shame. So that was going on. So what else am I talking about? Right, so the future. Let's talk about the future and what I'm going to be doing. So I have failed you all basically this year. So this time last year, I don't know if I did a live stream. I certainly did a vlog saying that this year I'm going to write a book, which I probably have said for the previous couple of years, but I was going to write a book and I was going to make just one video a month. And instead I've made probably one video every 3 weeks on average. I've only written about 170 pages of my first book, which most of which, if I'm honest, were written in the last month. But most of my time, or the spare time, went on the mythology database, which has been an absolute huge success in terms of research. It's totally blown my mind about how much that is used and the amount it is respected in the academic community right now. Yeah, so that has taken my time, unfortunately. Now, it is a great tool. It's a tool I use, but as part of me, if I'm honest, feels slightly unfair that I'm putting all my, or a significant chunk of effort into that and not making videos for you, especially all of you who supported me through YouTube members and Patreon. I feel a bit, yes, you're helping me do my research, and this is an output of that. And yes, we're helping the world get better, especially with the Paleolithic art database that's come from the mythology database. But I just feel a bit bad that if I didn't do the mythology database, I could make more videos. So I'm sort of balancing how to manage that. But I also must write a book. I am so behind schedule. It is unreal. So this year or next year, what I will do, so everybody's sure, because I do feel bad that I'm not making videos for you every day, because I'd love to, but I'm just can't make quality content and well-researched content every day. But what I will do is I will make at least one video a month. That is good. What I will try and do is try to make a majority of them next year to be story-related, myth-related. So because I know some of my videos have been more historical in terms of like looking at the pantheon shapes, or I had one about Neanderthals and talking bard. But I'll get a number of people say they miss me telling stories. They like me talking about how a story develops and evolves, and how it develops like that. So I will make an effort that the videos I make will have stories in them. And then with the other time, I will have to split it between the mythology database and just try and make that better, and writing the book. But I will also make a commitment, and it is something I said before, is that at some point in the future, I will give the mythology database away. I haven't intended to make a profit of it or anything like that, because I'm sure there'll be an unscrupulous version of me may sell it for like £10 a month access or something like that. I don't want to do that. I want to give it to a university or an organisation or an institution that can run it and continue it into the future, free of charge. So that's the plan with that, but that may not happen for 5 years or 10 years. But that is the plan. And when that happens, then I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can write more books and make more videos. But that is the sort of thing I think I have planned for next year, just to put the cards on the table on what I want to do. So I hope you're happy with that and that makes sense regarding those things. So let me, I've had a few questions whilst that's been going on. Did I see any cues? Oh, question. Right. I just joined. Hello, Vithar. Briefly, what is the book about, academic or fiction? Oh, my books, right. So, yes, a few of those questions, right. So, the book I will get out first will be about, I've called it Our Oldest Stories, in effect. That was what it's going to be about. But it's a bit more than that. So, I will discuss the fundamentals and the foundations, really, of comparative mythology. So, that means you've got to understand archaeology, linguistic evolution, genetic archaeology. So I'll put that all in sort of a context and easy to read manner as a foundation. I'll talk about how we can compare myths. Now, this is where it gets a bit fluffy, because I wanted to release a paper on that, because I have my own ideas on how to create a consistent method of comparing stories. And the reason I say that goes back to something we talked about a little earlier, which is that when you're translating something, you can get 2 or 3 or 4 different interpretations from it, depending on how it said, what it said, its context. So to compare two myths, certainly if they're in different languages, is really difficult, which is why we have mythemes, because mythemes create a description that should bridge cultural and linguistic boundaries. But how do you get 50 people to look at 1 million narratives and write down all the mythemes and know they've used the same sort of way to create those mythemes so you can compare them? And you sort of can't at the moment, but unless we can create a method to do that. And I've got an idea about that. It's a significant idea, and I didn't know whether to put that into the book. It might be a bit heavy, and maybe just reference it in the book and then release the paper separately. And then once I've done that, I will just talk about various stories and how they've evolved and how we know they're old, and lots of interesting comparisons. So examples. Can I give you an example? Let me see what I can do, because I don't want to get told off by any publisher or alike. Can I give you a preview of the sort of thing I'm doing? So here's one I've talked about a lot in the past. So let me do that. So in fact, I can't do it easy. It's easy to do it like that. So this is sort of an in-between chapter sort of thing, but I will sort of discuss here the story of the Enuma Elish, where I've in effect created an adaptation of some of the narrative, which if you can't read it, I will read it out for you. So in the Enuma Elish, it goes, while the war gods were sharpening their weapons, Tiamat, the deep, and Marduk, the chief gods, came together. Tiamat opened mouth, and she let the evil wind in so she could not close her lips. The fierce winds flew down to her belly. Her innards were revealed, and he, Marduk, let fly an arrow and pierced her belly. He extinguished her life. He split her in two. Her he set up and stretched out as the heavens. And then I quote Genesis 1:1-2 and a bit of 4, saying, when God began to create the heaven and the earth with darkness over the surface of the deep, Tihom, and a wind from God sweeping over it, it being Tihom, God separated the light from the darkness. To me, those two passages are pretty much identical, although mything-wise you can't quite get it, and I can work on that a bit more. So I'll put things like that between chapters to keep the curiosity going. But in the chapters, I'll discuss things like flood myths and creation myths, and there's a whole series of things I want to talk about. But they're sort of things. But there's some really interesting stories in there. One, if any of you know I think it might have been the Earth Diver. I read a creation myth, and it goes like this. It goes, before there was any light, there was only darkness. All was night. Before there was even darkness, there was nothing. It is said in the Karal Kia, at the beginning of time stood Tikor, the nothingness. Then was Tipo, the night, which was immensely long and immensely dark. The first light that existed was no more than the glowing of a worm, and when sun and the moon were made, there were no eyes, there was none to see them, not even Katikaki. The beginning was made from nothing. Now, I wanted to put that in the book, and that is from a paper by Witzel. And Witzel got that from a website called maori.org.nz, which no longer exists. But this is this page. So you got Witzel's paper that refers to a website that doesn't exist, which, if you trace back, goes to a story in this book. But it doesn't. It actually goes to an appendix in this book, which explains the story and how the story is probably wrong, and that the original story is from another book by a chap called Sir Spray, who went to New Zealand in the middle of the 19th century, who took stories, but the stories were probably already Christianized because missionaries had already been in New Zealand. And so I had to get hold of a copy of that book. So this book, which is 150 years old, to tell me the story, to create that. So that is the sort of things you have to do for that small verse to just make sure the research is done properly. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, researching a book just takes a lot of time. That's all. So let me answer some more questions. So, do you think there's a common metaphorical meaning behind the plants and the fruits that were eaten by Adam, Eve, Enki, etc. I not in terms of the garden, the sort of the Garden of Eden story. The fruit there was from a snake, and so my view is that the fruit and the snake are a key mytheme to the Adam and Eve story, and that has come from Africa. And I talk about that when I talk about myths of death and why humans lose immortality, which is one of our big worries in life. Why one of the questions humans ask as they grow up is, why do we die? We shouldn't die. Why do we die? Which I think is different to the reasons why we see people feasting on fruit and the like in other stories. So hopefully, I've had a few comments about the book. I'm trying not to make it too dry. There will be references everywhere. I mean, there's, I think on the third page, I'm already on reference 18, but they're not taking up space on the page. I'll put them as footnotes, and you don't have to read them. They're just there to prove that whatever I say can be referenced in other academic material. Okay, so that's it. But hopefully you'll like it. It's good for me because it reinforces many of the things I've already taught, but maybe have forgotten a bit about. But I am learning more things, and it is giving me a chance to tidy up my Zotero, which any student or researcher knows is something you don't do unless you have to. And so I'm glad I'm doing that. So right. So let me whiz down any other questions. Right. So I think about all the questions so far, and where are we time wise? I've been on for an hour. Okay. Was there anything else I wanted to tell you? One other thing I found out, and this may be obvious to some of you, but it's something I've heard about, but never really took a great interest till this, and that's the Adam and Eve story. So in the Bible, Adam's created twice. Once God says, let there be Adam, and Adam appears, and once he used his dust to create Adam. But the creation of Eve is done separately. And one of them, the Jewish Study Bible, which is pretty much the version you should refer to when quoting from the Bible, states that Eve is created from a rib of Adam. But I also know there are some translations that look like Adam was sort of split in half. And the more I think about it, and through the writing of the book and researching it, the more I'm convinced that it is actually Adam is split in half, because that would make an absolutely mythological reflex on the creation myth. Where you have Tiamat split in half to create the heaven and earth, and we see this dismemberment. Well, the dismemberment of the first man is used to create woman. That would make sense to me. So that was something else that just sort of popped in my head the other day when writing, and I may talk about that more in even in the book. But I just feel the thought of it, the mythological reflex of it, is far more powerful than using a rib, which I can't find anywhere else really in mything wise where that's happened. But the splitting up into two to create something substantial, we do. So yeah, I just throw that out there as another bit of information. Another question: never-ending battle. There is, it seems, in the Eden story, a direct connection between the knowledge and death. Explicit in the morning, yes. The loss of eternal life is a consequence of forbiddance. Well, it's knowledge and death because that is the story of the snake. So there are two snake stories I talk about around the loss of immortality, and the snake is important because the snake sheds its skin. So humans saw the snake shedding its skin and thought, oh, it's being reborn. It's got immortality. So you have to remember that the snake is immortal, and so are humans. And at the end of the story, only the snake is immortal. So what has happened? Well, in the story, you don't hear the snake as being immortal. You just think of it as a snake. And humans are immortal. So what's happened is that the snake's got to get immortality from the humans. And how that happens is there are two stories. One is we see a man lost in a jungle, and he keeps coming across the same house, and the house is run by a snake. A snake stars, and the snake says, "Come in, and I will give you food if you can say my name." Because names are magical generally in many myths and folklore. And the man says, "I don't know your name. I don't know your name." And he finds out the name eventually, comes back, says the snake's name, and the snake gives him some food. And once he's done that, then the man is indebted to the snake and has to say to the snake, "I'll give you whatever you want." And the snake says, "I want your immortality." So we see for food, and actually in the story, it is fruit. The snake, in effect, gives fruit, and the man loses immortality. That sounds similar, right? And then the other story is where we see the snake and the man race, and they pass a woman, and the snake tells man that he can sleep with the woman, which the man has never done before, and he stops and sleeps with the woman. Sort of weird take on the hare and the tortoise, so to speak. And obviously the man doesn't win the race because he has become knowledgeable of laying with women. And both of those, let's say they're from Africa, and I think there's a paper called, translated as "Death, What Have You Done With Me?" And that might be by Lequelec, maybe who which talks about that. And I have made a video on immortality, which has all that. So to me, knowledge and death, knowledge and the loss of immortality is what's connected, and that's or a gift giving and the loss of immortality is what's connected. But yeah, absolutely, that is their never-ending battle. Yes, so all right, so talking about Egyptian creation myths, there's lots of Egyptian creation myths. I've done a video on that as well, a few of them, and certainly some of them flow into the Near East and into the Bible. So, right. With that, because it is holiday period, I haven't really got much else to say because it's been quiet and I've been away. But I hope we've touched on lots of little things, and you had a nice hour or so of chatting and asking questions. And there's another question which I'll answer in a second. But I hope you all enjoyed that and are happy with everything that's going on. I hope the book sounds interesting. Hope you're happy with the videos I'm going to make, focus more on stories. But I will do a lot of work on the mythology database, but I will finish the book next year. That doesn't mean it's going to be published, because the publisher says they want a year to publish a book. So part of me is thinking, actually, should I go with a publisher and publish independently? I don't know. I'm thinking about that, but to put that out there. Anyway, there's another question, so let me answer that. Brian, what do you make of the overwhelming number of serpent tales in Irish and Scottish myth, while there is an extreme lack of serpents to be chased out by a saint in the archaeological record in the land? Yes, so Saint Patrick of Ireland is renowned for chasing all the snakes out of Ireland, and there are some people who think that is an analogy or metaphor, probably better, of chasing heathens and non-believers out of Ireland because of the snake symbol. And that is, in a word, nonsense. So, yes, it just isn't proof for that. But you also have to bear in mind that Ireland was influenced by, whilst many Irish came over to Scotland and England and Wales and Cornwall, many Britons went to Ireland with their stories. Now, what's also happened is that Britain's mythology is absolutely wrecked to pieces. So when the Romans came over, they would have changed some of our beliefs and myths, and the Anglo-Saxons came over, they would have changed some of them. Then the Normans came over and would have changed some of them. And then when Henry VIII caused his the burning of monasteries and the Roman Catholics, monasteries and churches, which would have been libraries of many stories, even pagan and heathen stories, they were erased. So as old as we like to think England is, its mythology isn't at all. Where places like Ireland and maybe even in parts of Scotland, that mythology persists, and so the mythology of dragons with that would persist, because the dragon mythology tends to be an older mythology rather than more modern stories from the Middle Ages onwards. So to me, that is the explanation for that, although I'm happy to be challenged on that. Yes, thank you everyone. Thank you all. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Naga. Thank you. Sorry, Diesel, you missed some of it, but yeah, it was a lovely little chat. Thank you, Lindsay and Oakstrong. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Vithar. Also lovely people. Yeah. Thank you all. Yeah, I just hope you're all well, and this is just to say hello, because sometimes you need a break from the family at Christmas or whatever you're doing. Remember, book editors are pedantic. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for listening and watching and all your support this year. It's been a great year. We've had millions of views on YouTube, and your support is overwhelming. We've done magical things on the mythology database. I am so privileged. You know, I every day I'm aware of that. So, yeah, hopefully what I give back, it makes it worthwhile, your support. So thank you all. Have a great new year. Hope 2026 brings you happiness and good health and many more stories and mythologies. So until then, you all take care. Stay tickety-boo. I'll say toodle pip. And this was Creckenford for 2025. Goodbye.